not get one that wants one. All right. All right. Well, it's good to be here once again tonight for all those that are in person and also those that are watching us through Facebook tonight. Had another good meal tonight. Appreciate all those that had a part in that. I told Chris, I said, I don't know how you planned this rainy, cold night for soup and grilled cheese sandwiches, but it worked very well for me. A lot of good times there. Appreciate Brother Terry. I told him Sunday night, I appreciate him covering for me. He made a crack about my hair, or the lack thereof. So I told him, I said, I drive this little 4-cylinder car, and Terry drives this diesel truck. You know what they say about those diesel trucks? When you get them running, they just keep going and going and going. So, no, I appreciate Terry doing that for me. And next week, Brother Tony's going to be doing the Bible study next week because me and Miss Melody will be out of town Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So looking forward to that. I think Brother Tony's planning on doing the Nehemiah study. So good times there. Anything stuck out from last week? Something that maybe Terry mentioned that sort of anything? Well, Nehemiah basically announces his call to action and says, "Hey, listen, let's get busy building." He thanked God for the gracious hand of God, and I didn't want to take any credit for anything that was going on through all the provisions. What an encouragement to the people! Hey, listen, we're gonna build these walls, and the king is going to pay for it. Right, the king is going to finance it there, and it was not even the king's city, and certainly we know that he had already stopped the rebuilding of the walls before, and saw those guys, Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. They tried to discourage the people from working through using embarrassment and also fear, and Nehemiah kind of stopped them in their tracks and told them, he said, "Listen, you have no place here. You have no heritage here. This is not your place." And certainly the main emphasis for rebuilding the walls was that it would not be a reproach on God. Well, tonight we see that Nehemiah begins to organize the workers and delegate them for the work to do. If you don't have your Bibles, Nehemiah chapter 3, we're going to begin reading here in just a few minutes. Try to do our slides a little bit different tonight. We're still trying to work and twerk those things, so bear with us tonight. Like I said, Nehemiah began to organize the workers. Leaders, we cannot do all the work by ourselves. And if you try to do everything by yourself, you will find out that you are not successful. Not only will you be wore out, but you will also be discouraged. About 40 names given here in the verses we're going to look at tonight that sort of headed up the project. Nehemiah delegated the work and expected them to do their job well. Nehemiah gave clear instructions on who was to be doing what and where they were to be doing it. I'm not one that loves instructions. Okay, I sometimes skip over the instructions and just look at the pictures. Anybody else like that? Okay. I put together a few swing sets and a whole lot of deer stands, and without pictures, they would not get done. I remember. That's right. I remember some deer stands I put together. I couldn't understand how something was turned, but I took the box out and looked at the picture. There it was. I want to share a few things by way of instruction this evening, just maybe put a smile on your face here. Tesco's tiramisu dessert box says, "Do not turn the box upside down." You want to guess where that warning is written? On the bottom of the box. Mark and Spencer's bread pudding. Product will be hot after heating. Yeah. Children's cough medicine. Listen to the warning on this. Do not drive a car after taking this medication. Nighttall sleep aid. Warning, may cause drowsiness. Thought that was kind of the point. Superman costume for children. Wearing this garment does not enable one to fly. I pity the child that finds that out the hard way. If we were reading through the book of Nehemiah and we came to the verses that we're going to come to tonight, we're going to read tonight, many of us would just sort of skip over these verses because they seem more like a family lineage that we see in other places in the Bible, different places in the Old Testament. And to be completely honest with you, I hit those places in the Bible and I sort of skim through them. You may read them, but you don't really give it a lot of thought to them. But in the verses we're going to look at tonight, we see that Nehemiah chose to be more detail-oriented than action-oriented. And certainly Nehemiah wrote these scriptures as all the other scriptures were written under the inspiration of God. This was a chunk of work. And as we can see there in chapter 6, verse 15, it only took 52 days to rebuild this wall. And that was an amazing accomplishment. You know, I don't know what you're envisioning here when we say we're going to rebuild the wall, but this wall would have been like 2.5 miles long. It would have been about 40 foot high and about 8 foot wide. I mean, that is a big task to complete in just 52 days without modern machinery and things like we would use to get today. Nehemiah, in delegating the work, he began with the northern wall and moved counterclockwise around the city of Jerusalem. So that is how we will approach this as we look at these walls and look at the process of rebuilding the wall. So let's begin reading tonight, chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. And I want to apologize tonight for how I'm going to butcher these names. There ain't but about 4 or 5 that I really know. If anybody else would like to volunteer to read tonight, okay, I didn't think so. All right. Then Eliashib, the high priest, rose up his brethren and the priest and built the sheep gate. They consecrated it and hung its doors. They built as far as the Tower of the 100 and consecrated it, and then as far as the Tower of Hananiah. Next to Eliashib, I know I used to say that one right, the men of Jericho built, and next to them Zakur, the son of Imri, built. Also the sons of Hesenah built the fish gate, and then they laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and bars. Tonight we begin our study and see that Nehemiah begins delegating the work on the sheep gate. This gate may have also been known as the Benjamin Gate before the exile, and there's some scripture listed there. John 5:2 records that Jesus came through this sheep gate into Jerusalem where he heals a man by the pool of Bethesda. Nehemiah would have delegated the work according to the interest of their workers. We're going to see that here in a minute when we talk about that sheep gate. This means wherever they were working would have been an area that they are concerned about and would have been most productive. That is the same thing for us today. The areas that we are passionate about, the ministries that we're excited about, those are the ministries that we need to be involved in because we're going to be more productive in those. And this sheep gate was a prime example of that. When the high priest and other priests volunteered to work on, Nehemiah gave them the assignment of working and rebuilding the sheep gate. Now, there's no way that these priests could have known that approximately 400 years later, Jesus Christ himself, the Lamb of God, would walk through this gate to go pray in the Garden of Gethsemane. Priests don't typically work with hammers and stones, right? When you think of a priest and you read about priests in the Bible, you don't think of them working with hammers and stones. But this was no typical situation, right? And the priest here sort of stepped out of their box and said, you know, we're going to do something that's not common to us, something that we're not skilled in. But they set the example for others. The sheep gate was important because of its proximity to the temple and its relationship to the temple. If you wanted to buy a sheep in Jerusalem, where do you think you'd go? To the sheep, not the sheep store, the sheep gate. Oh, sheep were not only purchased for personal use, but the sheep would have also been purchased for the temple. And after hanging the doors, it says that the priests consecrated the gate. That word consecrate is the Hebrew word for sanctify. It's interesting that the priest in all their priestly activities and their operations with the temple saw this sheep gate as part of the temple system. Rebuilding the walls progresses from gate to gate, including rebuilding the gates. An undertaking like this would have required a large workforce and a distribution of the workforce. You remember that Nehemiah, when he traveled here, he didn't bring a lot of help with him. He didn't bring a lot of Jews to help with him. Certainly he had his armed guards. He had his armed God too. But he had his armed guards that would go with him, but he didn't bring a lot of people. All these people that are working on the project, all these names that we see listed here were already in the area. Nehemiah placed people where they would be most effective. Tonight we're going to see one instance, and if you look over when Brother Tony gets in here next Wednesday, if you look, a lot of these people, when they worked where their homes were. Nehemiah was a smart guy, right? And if I am rebuilding the wall at my home, what kind of wall do you think I'm going to build? I'm going to build a sturdy wall. I'm going to build a solid wall. If this is close to my home, I'm going to make sure I put my best effort. I mean, it just makes common sense. You know, if we're just working anywhere, we may kind of throw things together and hope it all works out for the best. But if this is my home, if this is protection for my house, then I'm going to make sure that I do my best. So Nehemiah was smart in that. Nehemiah's plans showed that he knew the project and also the people. Nehemiah grouped these people together and emphasized the cooperation among the people. This is no different for us today in the local church. You know, we serve together, at least I hope we serve together, as the local church in a mission to fulfill the great commandment, to see Christ magnified in this community. Like the local church, every member on this wall was important. And Nehemiah could not, and the work could not afford for members to be absent. Let's continue reading there in verse 3. Reread verse 3 and go down through verse 5. Also, the sons of Hesenah built the fish gate. They laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and bars. And next to the Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Koz, made repairs. Next to them, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshabel, made repairs. Next to them, Zadok, the son of Bana, made repairs. Next to them, the Techyites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. Now on to the fish gate. Tyler, if you wanted to buy a fish, where would you go? The fish gate. Today you would go to the fish store. Tell y'all a little story. Me and Melody went on a missions trip to New York City, and we were walking around in New York City. I tell people we got off the plane in New York, but then we got off the subway in China. Okay, we were in one of the Chinatowns, and we could not read anything that was on the signs. I mean, it was all in Chinese, and we walked into what I thought was a fish store or an aquarium, and went in there, and they had all these aquarium with all these fish, and I'm like, man, there's some big fish for an aquarium, right? And then somebody came in and talked to one of the guys, and he grabbed one of those fish out of that aquarium, laid it on the table, hit it with a mallet, threw it in a bag, and sent him out the door. And I said, this is probably not a pet store. It was a fish store, Tyler. But this would have also been referred to as the middle gate that we see there in Jeremiah chapter 39, verse 3. And this would have been the site of Jerusalem's fish market. So if you wanted a fish, you went to the fish gate. If you wanted a sheep, you went to the sheep gate. Now let me tell you, as we go through this, especially when Mr. Tony gets into it next week, it is not going to be that easy to determine what are at these gates, all right? But these were where the men of Tyre and local fishermen would come and sell their catch. One thing that I want to point out tonight is in verse 5. It says, next to them, the Techyites made repairs, but their nobles did not put their shoulders to the work of their Lord. Nehemiah noticed that this group of people made repairs without the assistance of their nobles. And it's possible that these nobles did not contribute to the work because they saw it as a menial task. Some have suggested that maybe these nobles had aligned themselves with Tobiah, and possibly for personal gain they were not participating. I'm going to flip over. You don't got to go to it. But Nehemiah chapter 6, beginning in verse 17, and it says, "Also in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters. The nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came to them. For many in Judah were pledged to him because he was the son-in-law of Sennacherib, the son of Era, and his son Jehohanan, and married the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah." We'll go with that. All right. So it's possible that these nobles didn't participate because they were sort of undermining the work of Nehemiah. Let me say this. When you're in leadership, you have to love all people, even those that maybe aren't contributing to the work, maybe even those that are trying to undermine your work. But you'll notice as we move through this story, despite not everyone wanting to contribute to the work, despite not everyone wanting to get on board, Nehemiah did not allow this to discourage him. The old phrase, you got to move with the movers. And that is exactly what Nehemiah did. He continued to delegate the work to those who were willing to get involved. Something else that sort of stuck out to me, despite the nobles not being involved and contributing with these Techyites, they performed double the work. I'm not going to read it, but if you read down in verse 27, you will see that this group of people was assigned another section of the wall. And I can't help but think that was because they had already completed their work. You got to love even those that undermine your ministry when you're in leadership. But you also got to really love those extra milers, right, that go a step beyond to do. And certainly Nehemiah had some among these people. So let's continue reading there in verse 6. And it says, "Moreover, Jehoiada, the son of Paseah, and Meshullam, the son of Besaiah, repaired the old gate. They laid its beams and hung its doors with its bolts and bars. And next to them, Methiah, the Gibeonite, Jordan, Meronophite, the men of Gibeon, the Mitzvah, repaired the residence of the governor of the region beyond the river. Next to him, Uzziel, the son of Hariah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs." Who do we got working on the walls? A goldsmith, right? Someone that makes jewelry, someone that works with gold. We now see that they're working on the walls. Also, next to him, Hananiah, one of the perfumers. So not only do we got goldsmiths working on the walls, but now we got those that make perfume. And they fortified Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. And next to them, Raphiah, the son of Hur, leader of the half district of Jerusalem, made repairs. So we see some leaders here, possibly a governor here, making repairs. Next to them, Jedediah, the son of Hamiraph, made repairs in front of his house. Now, this is the only instance we see this mentioned here, but next week you will see made repairs in front of his house, in front of his home. Once again, we talked about why that would be so important. And next to him, Hadashus, the son of Harshabaniah, made repairs, and Malchijah, the son of Harim, and Hashab, the son of Phate of Moab, repaired another section, as well as the Tower of Ovens. And next to him was Shalom, the son of Helashesh, leader of the half district of Jerusalem. He and his daughters made repairs. So not only did we have men out here working, we had daughters and certainly women out here working on the walls. Now the western wall. And while we're focusing primarily on these gates, we've already talked about the sheep gate and the fish gate. We're going to talk about the old gate here in a few minutes. They didn't just repair the gates; they had to repair all the walls in between the gates, because what would gates be without walls. On the western wall, we had the Old Gate and also the Valley Gate. In Nehemiah's day, there was a part of Jerusalem referred to as the Old City, so it is likely that this Old Gate was most likely the gate to the Old City. In this passage, we also see the broad wall mentioned here in verse 8. And most likely, this was not part of the wall in the sense that circled Jerusalem. The broad wall was most likely a section of wall that sort of jutted out off of the main wall. In 1970, some archaeologists discovered what they believed to have been the broad wall. Why was it called the broad wall? Well, the broad wall was about 80 feet long and measured about 23 feet wide. That is a big, stinking wall. You got to remember that in Bible times, a lot of times these walls would be used as apartments. These would be people's housing. So most likely this broad wall was like an apartment style housing. In Bible days, some of these walls, it's rumored, were thick enough that you could race horses on the wall. I've seen some racing before, right, and some rubbing that goes on. I don't know that I would want to do some racing down a 40-foot wall. Seems like if you got a little crazy, it may not end so well for you. We also see here the Tower of Furnaces, or the Tower of Ovens. This was most likely the place where the Jewish bakers baked bread for Jerusalem. Over in Jeremiah, when Jeremiah is wrongly imprisoned for supposedly defecting to the Chaldeans, they are told to bring him bread from the baker's street. Most likely that's where this was. I already sort of alluded to the fact that everyone got involved in the building. You had the general labor, you had the skilled craftsmen, like those that work with gold, you had perfume makers, you had high-ranking officials there, you had women, you had daughters. So basically you've got anything from politicians, goldsmiths, perfume makers laying bricks. And you say, what does a perfume maker know about laying brick? Probably not a whole lot before God presented them with this job to do. And Nehemiah, of course, he knew that not all these people were skilled to do the work that God had given them to do. So most likely, there were people there going alongside and helping these people. They were willing. And, you may look at some sort of ministry sometime. You may look at something that God has called it on your heart to do. And you look at it and you say, there is no way that I can do that. I don't have the skills to do that. But you know what? We don't have to have the skills to do what God has called us to do. We just have to be willing to do the work. And, that was the heart of this goldsmith. That was the heart of this perfume maker when Nehemiah said, hey, listen, let's build the walls. You guys head down here. They were willing, and God provided with the skill. It's hard to turn a boat that's sitting still. Anybody ever tried to do that? I know there's some of you that own boats and stuff. How easy to turn a boat when it's sitting still? It don't happen, right? You can turn that steering wheel and it ain't going nowhere unless there's some current moving or you got some motor behind it, right? So what is the challenge there? If you don't know what God is doing, just what God wants you to do, just get involved. Get to doing something, and God will lead you in the direction that He would have you to go. I know that when God got a hold of my heart and really broke me when I went to Bible college, because I really did not want to go to Bible college because you had to stand up in front of people and talk, and you had to wear a tie, and I didn't like doing either one of those things. But God has a sense of humor, right? And I remember me and my wife, I enrolled in Bible college, and they were like, well, what major do you want to take? And I'm like, I have no clue. You know what I mean? God made it clear I was supposed to be here, and I am here. Sign me up for the Bible class. Well, they're all Bible classes. Okay, well, me and Melody were working with the teenagers at that time. Sign me up for youth ministry, right? The idea is, we're already serving and already doing, and allow God to lead. And since then, God has led us out of youth ministry and back into youth ministry and back out of youth ministry. And, we just got to be obedient to what God has called us to do. God, we don't need to put restrictions on God. We just need to be obedient to what God has called us to do. Verse 13 here. We're going to read our last verse for tonight. And Hananiah, the inhabitants of Zanoah, repaired the valley gate. They built it, hung its doors with its bolts and bars, and repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the refuse gate. All right, so what do you buy at the refuse gate? Yeah, it's the refuge gate, the stinky place. Okay, you didn't go there to buy, but we'll let Mr. Tony deal with that next week. But the valley gate here overlooked the Tarapian Valley. I put that up there. I was Googling this a little bit today, and it was between Mount Moriah and another mount, and I cannot think of the other mount. Those are the mounts that sort of made up this valley on the west side of Jerusalem. If you remember, when Nehemiah made his late night run to sort of survey the walls, he began here at the valley gate. So what is our application for tonight? No matter whatever your skill set is, get involved in serving God. Do something and allow God to lead you in the direction. Do something and allow God to give you the skills and the people that you need to do those. If you're a leader of any ministry, don't get discouraged because not everybody gets on board, because not everybody is going to get on board. Get excited about those that are working and run with those. Make sure as a leader that you have a plan. You know, Nehemiah didn't just, I don't know, I can't say that Nehemiah didn't. Knowing what we know about Nehemiah so far, I don't think Nehemiah showed up and said, hey, you over there and you over there and you. I think he had a plan for doing what he did. So as a leader, make sure you've got a plan. You know, make sure if you're putting some project together, if you're putting some ministry together, make sure you got a plan. Make sure that you bathe that plan in prayer and give specific instructions. You know, if we don't give instructions, people can get confused, right? And there's anxiety when we don't have a clear vision and a clear description of what is going on here. They rebuilt 1,000 cubits, almost 1,500 feet of the wall from the refuge gate or refuse gate, or dung gate. Next week, if Mr. Tony continues through this study, you will see that there are some nice gates to work at and some not so nice gates to work at. And as you can imagine, the dung gate probably would not have been one of those exciting ones to work at. Any other questions or comments on anything that we've talked about tonight? Anything you want to add to it? Nobody? Nobody? All right. We'll move into our prayer time tonight.